I never thought my aviation consulting business would be the key to taking down an HOA president, but Karen had no idea who she was messing with when she started her campaign against my perfectly legal home-based office. My name's Marcus Webb, and I'd been living peacefully in Meadowbrook Estates for 3 years before Karen Whitmore seized control of the HOA board. I ran a successful aviation consulting firm from my home office, advising private airports and wealthy clients on everything from runway construction to Federal Aviation Administration compliance. The work was quiet, conducted entirely through video calls and site visits. No clients came to my house. No noise. No traffic. Just me, my computer, and occasionally my laptop on the back deck. Karen lived 4 houses down in what she called the crown jewel of the neighborhood, a gaudy Mediterranean-style McMansion with more columns than the Parthenon. Within a month of becoming HOA president, she'd already issued 17 violations to various neighbors for offenses ranging from mailbox paint color 3% off approved pallet to lawn height exceeding maximum by 1/4 inch. Before we go further, if you're enjoying this story of HOA justice, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this power-tripping president's own rules become her ultimate downfall. Now, let's get back to how Karen made the biggest mistake of her life. The first violation notice appeared on my door on a Tuesday morning. Violation of HOA Covenant Section 12.7-B, operating a commercial business from residential property. Fine, $200. Compliance required within 14 days. I called Karen immediately, keeping my tone professional. Karen, hi, this is Marcus Webb from 42 Oakmont Drive. I received a violation notice about my business, but I'm not operating a commercial business in the traditional sense. I work from home as a consultant. No clients visit, no inventory, no signage, nothing that impacts the neighborhood. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. Oh, Marcus, I'm sure you understand we have rules for a reason. This is a residential community, not a business park. The covenants are very clear. No commercial enterprises. I've reviewed the covenants, I said calmly. The restriction applies to businesses that generate traffic, require commercial vehicles, or alter the residential character. I'm working on a computer. It's no different than someone working remotely for a corporation. Well, that's your interpretation, she sniffed. The board has made its decision. Pay the fine or cease operations. Those are your options. I paid the fine, documenting everything carefully. I dealt with enough difficult clients and bureaucratic agencies to know that paper trails were essential. 2 weeks later, another violation. Unapproved vehicle parked in driveway overnight. Fine, $150. The unapproved vehicle was my Audi S8, which I'd owned for 2 years and had parked in the same spot every night since moving in. I called Karen again. Your car is black, she explained with exaggerated patience, as if talking to a child. Section 8.3 of the Vehicle Guidelines specifies approved colors: white, silver, beige, light blue, or gray. Black vehicles create visual discord. Karen, this rule was never enforced before. Half the neighborhood has dark-colored cars. Well, as president, I'm ensuring we finally maintain our standards. You have 3 days to comply or the fine doubles. I researched the actual covenants that night. The vehicle color restriction was in a non-binding, aesthetic guideline document from 2008 that had never been formally incorporated into the enforceable rules. But arguing with Karen was like arguing with a brick wall that filed complaints. Over the next month, the violations multiplied. My lawn was too green, suggesting excessive watering during drought consciousness period. My mailbox post was 1.2 inches too tall. My porch light exceeded approved lumens for ambient evening illumination. Each violation came with fines ranging from $100 to $300. I tried appealing to the full HOA board, but Karen had stacked it with her friends, Deborah and Patricia, who rubber-stamped every decision she made. At the monthly meeting, I presented my case calmly, with documentation showing the arbitrary nature of the enforcement. Karen smiled that vicious smile of hers and said, "Marcus, if you don't like our community standards, perhaps Meadowbrook Estates isn't the right fit for you. Nobody's forcing you to live here." That's when I noticed the pattern. Karen's violations were strategic. She was specifically targeting my work situation, trying to make it impossible for me to maintain my home office. A conversation with my neighbor, Robert, confirmed my suspicions. "She's been asking questions about you," Robert said over his fence. "Wanted to know if you have clients coming and going, if you make noise, if packages arrive. I told her you're the quietest neighbor on the block, but she seemed disappointed." The final straw came when Karen filed a formal complaint with the county zoning department, claiming I was operating an illegal commercial enterprise from a residential property. I received a notice requiring me to appear before the zoning board with documentation of my business activities. This went beyond petty HOA harassment. This was an attempt to shut down my livelihood. I showed up to the zoning hearing with 3 years of tax returns, my business license showing my registered office as a commercial suite downtown, and a letter from my business attorney explaining that home-based consulting work without client visits was explicitly permitted under county code. The zoning board dismissed Karen's complaint in 15 minutes. But Karen had made a critical error. She'd poked the bear. And this bear had resources she couldn't imagine. See, my aviation consulting wasn't just some side hustle. I specialized in private airport development for ultra-high net worth clients. I'd helped a Saudi prince build a private airstrip in Montana. I'd consulted on a tech billionaire's mountaintop helipad in Colorado. I knew aviation law better than most FAA officials. And I'd made a lot of money doing it. More importantly, I noticed something interesting about Meadowbrook Estates during my late-night research into property records. The development was built in 2005 on land that had previously been a small municipal airport, decommissioned in 1998. The old airport's property lines extended beyond the current neighborhood boundaries, including a long strip of undeveloped land that bordered the eastern edge of the development. That undeveloped strip was exactly where Karen's crown jewel, McMansion, sat, along with 5 other properties. They'd been built on the extreme eastern edge of the development, presumably because the lots were larger and offered better views. Here's the interesting part. When the old airport was decommissioned, the aviation easements weren't properly dissolved. They were simply ignored because there was no active airport. Those easements granted specific rights for aircraft operations, including takeoff and landing approach paths, noise allowances, and restricted development zones. I spent 2 weeks researching case law and FAA regulations. I consulted with 3 different aviation attorneys. I reviewed county records, surveyor maps, and original airport blueprints from the 1960s. And I made some phone calls to old clients with very deep pockets. Then I bought the undeveloped land adjacent to Meadowbrook Estates. All 47 acres of it. Cost me $2.3 million, but I'd made $8 million the previous year, so it was an investment I could afford. Karen noticed the sold sign but didn't think much of it. Why would she? It was just empty land outside the HOA boundaries. The next step was filing an application with the county for a private airstrip license. The property was zoned for agricultural or aviation use. The old aviation easements were still technically active, and there was no county ordinance preventing private airstrips on properly zoned land. I hired the best aviation engineering firm in the state to design a small private airport. Nothing fancy, just a 5,200-foot runway, a small terminal building, hangar space for 6 aircraft, and all the lighting and navigation equipment required by FAA regulations for nighttime operations. The County Planning Commission approved my application in 6 weeks. The FAA rubber-stamped the airspace designation. Everything was completely legal, and by the book. But here's where those old aviation easements became crucial. The original airport's approach path ran directly over the eastern edge of Meadowbrook Estates. Right over Karen's house. When the airport was active, homes weren't allowed to be built there. But when it closed, developers had ignored the easements, assuming they were meaningless. Now that I was reactivating a private airport on adjacent land, those easements were very much enforceable. According to FAA regulations and the original easement documents, properties under the approach path had to comply with specific restrictions: no structures above a certain height, no interference with aircraft operations, and acceptance of aircraft noise at all hours. These restrictions were filed with the original property deeds, binding on all future owners. Karen's McMansion, with its decorative bell tower and elaborate chimney structures, exceeded the maximum height restriction by 17 feet. I filed the easement enforcement paperwork with the county on a Friday afternoon. By Monday morning, Karen had a notice on her door from the county code enforcement office. She was at my door by Tuesday, her face purple with rage. "What the hell did you do?" "Good morning, Karen," I said pleasantly. "I assume you received the easement enforcement notice? You can't do this. This is my home. I've lived here for 12 years. Well, technically, you've lived here in violation of aviation easements for 12 years, I corrected. The easements were filed in 1964 and never properly dissolved. They run with the land. When you purchased the property, you accepted those restrictions, even if you weren't aware of them. This is insane. There's no airport here. There will be in about 8 months, I said, showing her the architectural plans. Webb Private Airfield. I've already got commitments from 3 corporate clients who need convenient access to this area. Small jets, mostly. Some turboprops. All perfectly legal and within FAA noise guidelines for residential approach zones. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. You're building an airport just to spite me? Oh no, I said, my voice calm and measured. I'm building an airport because it's a sound business investment. The spite is just a bonus. You see, Karen, when you filed that zoning complaint trying to shut down my consulting business, you made me realize something. I don't need to work from home. I can work from anywhere. So why not work from my own private airport? The HOA will fight this. I smiled. The HOA has no authority over property outside its boundaries. And even if it did, those aviation easements supersede any HOA covenants. Federal law trumps local homeowner associations, Karen. Always has, always will. I'll sue you. For what? Operating a legal business on legally zoned property while enforcing legally filed easements. Be my guest. I've got 3 aviation attorneys on retainer who specialize in exactly these kinds of cases. How's your legal budget? I could see the gears turning in her head, the dawning realization that she was outmatched. Oh, and Karen? I added. About those height violations on your property. The county requires compliance within 90 days. That bell tower and those decorative chimneys need to come down. They're 17 feet over the maximum allowed height for structures in the approach zone. The fines for non-compliance start at $500 per day. After 90 days, the county can pursue demolition and lien your property for the costs. This is blackmail. No, this is code enforcement. You know, like all those violations you've been sending me? Turns out, I'm just ensuring everyone follows the rules. For safety reasons, of course. Can't have structures interfering with aircraft approach paths. Very dangerous. Karen's face went from purple to pale. What do you want? Want? I don't want anything, Karen. I'm simply operating my business. Though I suppose if someone were to rescind all those frivolous HOA violations against me, provide a written letter of apology, and resign from the HOA board, I might be persuaded to limit my flight operations to daytime hours only. Otherwise, the FAA authorizes 24-hour operations, and I've got some clients who prefer nighttime arrivals. She stood there, trembling with rage and disbelief, unable to formulate a response. You have a nice day, I said, closing the door. Construction began in March. I hired the best contractors in the state, and I paid premium rates for fast work. By September, Webb Private Airfield was operational. The runway was pristine. The terminal building was modest but elegant. And I'd already leased hangar space to 4 corporate clients whose jets needed convenient access to the metro area. Karen tried everything. She filed complaints with the county, all dismissed. She tried to organize the neighborhood against me, but most residents didn't care since the airport wasn't directly over their homes. She even hired a lawyer, who took one look at the easement documents and told her she had no case. The bell tower came down in August. The decorative chimneys followed in September. Her crown jewel, McMansion, now looked oddly squat, its grandeur diminished by the removal of its most distinctive features. But the real beauty of my revenge wasn't just the airport or the easements. It was what happened to property values. See, homes under airport approach paths typically sell for 20 to 30% less than comparable properties. Karen's house, which she'd bought for $800,000, was now worth maybe $550,000. Her neighbors on the eastern edge faced similar devaluation. Karen tried to sell in October, listing at $795,000. After 6 months and 3 price reductions, she got an offer for $490,000. She didn't take it. She couldn't afford to. She'd refinanced the house to pay for her daughter's wedding and still owed $600,000 on the mortgage. The HOA meetings became painful for her. Neighbors whose property values had tanked blamed her for not doing due diligence on the easements before they bought. The board voted to remove her as president in November. Deborah and Patricia, her loyal supporters, turned on her like sharks. I attended that meeting, sitting quietly in the back. When the vote came, I didn't even need to say anything. Karen's reign of petty tyranny had created so many enemies that the room was packed with people eager to watch her fall. As for me, I loved my new office. The terminal building had a gorgeous executive suite on the second floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway. I could watch jets land while I worked on my laptop. My commute was a pleasant 10-minute drive. And my business actually grew. Several clients found it impressive that I operated from my own private airfield. The final piece came on a crisp December morning. I was in my office when I heard the familiar whine of jet engines. A beautiful Gulfstream G200 was on approach, one of my Saudi clients' planes making a fuel stop. I walked out to the observation deck with my coffee and watched it come in, the approach path taking it directly over Karen's reduced McMansion. The jet was well within legal noise limits, but it was impossible to ignore. Through my binoculars, I could see Karen in her backyard, staring up at the plane with an expression of pure, impotent fury. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Her mouth was moving, probably screaming obscenities that nobody could hear over the engine noise. The Gulfstream touched down smoothly, and I savored my coffee as it taxied to the terminal. Karen had spent months trying to force me out of the neighborhood with petty rules and vindictive enforcement. She tried to destroy my business and my peace of mind. She'd wielded her tiny bit of power like a tyrant. And now, every single day, multiple times per day, she would hear the sound of aircraft engines as jets approached my airfield over her house. A constant, legal, completely unavoidable reminder that her petty power trip had consequences. She tried to weaponize the rules against me. So I'd weaponized federal aviation law against her. And unlike her HOA violations, there was no appeal process, no friendly board members to overrule the decision, and absolutely no way to make it stop. The look on her face as another plane came in for landing was everything I'd hoped for. Pure shock. Complete disbelief. The devastating realization that she hadn't just lost, she'd been systematically dismantled by someone who knew exactly how to use her own tactics against her, but with resources and expertise she couldn't match. She'd wanted to run people out of the neighborhood. Instead, she'd brought an airport to her backyard. Permanently. Legally. And absolutely devastatingly. If you enjoyed watching Karen get exactly what she deserved, smash that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more stories of entitled people facing epic consequences. Because sometimes, karma doesn't just arrive, it lands on a private runway right over your house.